What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the A24 Archive. This is the segment on my channel where I go back through A24's entire filmography from the first film they released all the way until whenever I get caught up. And I have been very excited to do this episode for quite some time now because this coincides with another segment I do on my channel called Nate's Favorites, where I talk about some of my favorite movies of all time. And this is, in fact, one of my favorite movies ever made. And I love talking about this movie because I truly believe this is a misunderstood masterpiece. I think this movie really kind of got screwed over by A24. It was in production hell for a very long period of time. They did some advanced test screenings for it, and it didn't go over very well because the movie is very surreal and abstract and very different than a lot of things that A24 releases in their catalog. And because of sort of the tepid reaction, it seemed that they were afraid to release this until finally they just kind of dumped it on VOD and did a couple of limited screenings at some theaters across the US. And I remember the first time I watched this movie being completely and totally blown away by it. And I think this is my seventh watch of this movie, and every time I watch it, I get something new out of it and find something else to appreciate with it. And I'm really excited to tell you about Under the Silver Lake today. Under the Silver Lake is directed by David Robert Mitchell. Young and disenchanted Sam meets a mysterious and beautiful woman who's swimming in his building's pool one night. When she suddenly vanishes the next morning, Sam embarks on a surreal quest across LA to decode the secret behind her disappearance, leading him into the murkiest depths of mystery, scandal, and conspiracy. So, like I said, I absolutely adore this movie, and I was really excited to watch it when it first came out because this is directed by David Robert Mitchell, who made It Follows. And I thought It Follows was an incredible horror movie. I actually believe that was the first episode of Nate's Favorites I did on the channel. I absolutely adore that movie. I think it's phenomenal. And what's really interesting is there's a lot of parallels between It Follows and Under the Silver Lake when it comes to telling stories about women. Under the Silver Lake is very much a movie that is tackling misogyny in Hollywood and kind of showcasing it to a very extreme sense. And that's really only one of the things that the film covers. But I find it interesting with It Follows and how the plot of that movie so much revolves around young women's experience with sex, how they're perceived due to their sexuality. And it's really interesting. I'm curious to see what David Robert Mitchell does with the newest movie he's about to release, of how female centric his movies are and how much about women's experiences his movies are, even though Under the Silver Lake has a lead character that is a man. And I'm really excited to tell you a little bit more about it today. So in Under the Silver Lake, we're introduced to Sam, played by Andrew Garfield, who, to put it plainly, is a loser. He cannot hang on to a job. He's living at this apartment that he cannot afford. He is well behind on his rent. There's been threats that he's going to get evicted. And he just kind of meanders in his day-to-day life. He sits at home, he watches TV, he plays video games, he masturbates a lot, and he doesn't really do anything else. We see this actress who comes to his house, played by Ricky Lindome, who, like, the two of them clearly don't have anything serious going on, but it's very awkward and uncomfortable. But early on in the movie, Sam looks out his window and sees Sarah, played by Keough, walking to the pool, and he sees her out there with her dog, and he laughs at this interaction that she has with one of the people that lives in his apartment complex. And he becomes just fascinated with her. And one night he ends up running into her, and the two of them spend some time together, and they end up going back to her apartment, and they just kind of sit and watch a movie together, and they have just really kind of bland like everyday conversation, but they seem to be very much enjoying each other's company. He leaves and goes home, and he wants to see her the next day, and he goes to meet up with her the next day, and her apartment is completely cleared out. There's nothing there. She packed everything up, and her and her friends all moved out overnight. Well, he feels like that there's something fishy going on because of that. And so he starts to do this detailed investigation of where she went missing to. And he starts going to all these parties throughout LA and trying to figure out, was she involved in something larger? There is a predominant celebrity in the area who's gone missing recently, and he's curious if she could be connected to that. And the entire film is Sam going on these adventures throughout LA and the Silver Lake area to try try to find out where this young woman has disappeared to. Like I said, I absolutely love this movie, and there are a ton of reasons for that, but I'll start with the performances. Andrew Garfield was perfect to choose for the lead in this movie. And what I think so interesting is when I think about Andrew Garfield and what he's done throughout his career, he normally plays the incredibly likable character that everyone just wants to root for. And in this movie, he is the antithesis of that. He is a slob, he's lazy, and he's kind of a misogynist. He's not really a good person whatsoever. And I think that's a fascinating character to put at the forefront of your film because you can't really empathize for him, but there are situations where you do feel bad for him despite seeing him do things that you're just kind of like, oh, this guy is such an idiot. Like, and I love movies like that where you can have sort of a lovable loser that is at the forefront of the movie. And I think what's interesting is he's trying to solve this mystery that's semi unsolvable. You get information, but there's a lot of things in this movie that don't get resolved. And I think having this character who's kind of clueless in moments where he thinks he stumbled upon something, it works really well. And I think Andrew Garfield does a really fantastic job. And there is an enormous cast of characters in this movie. There's no use in me going through the entire catalog of characters, but there are some really fantastic performances. And I think because of the performances, this movie has a really incredible personality that makes it very easy to immerse yourself into. The cinematography in this is beautiful, which I am not surprised whatsoever with how beautiful It Follows looked. This movie pays so much attention to detail in production design and costuming, where certain things are placed in the frame, and it's truly masterfully made. It is a beautiful looking movie, and I feel like because of the mystery surrounding this, there's a lot of familiar LA landmarks and things in the movie, but there's also these really mysterious, strange places that our lead character goes to. And I think the utilization of color and especially like the framing of space, and in certain scenes, like when he goes to the Griffith Observatory, there's a lot of really great attention to detail in the cinematography in those scenes and just capturing some landmarks. I actually went to LA a few years ago, and the Airbnb I stayed at was in the Silver Lake area, and it was really interesting rewatching this to see some of the areas that I drove by and kind of walked through while I was in LA. But like LA is such an interesting place. It really is. When you go visit it, there's something super unique and fascinating about the area. And I think David Robert Mitchell does a really fantastic job capturing the ambiance and atmosphere of the area while adding this like allure of mystery. It's very much in the vein of Lynch's Mulholland Drive. There's even a lot of similarities when it comes to the dissection of the Hollywood machine that I really appreciate about this movie. But I think because of the visual style, it makes the film such an incredible experience. Disaster Piece also did the score for this movie. He did the score for It Follows, and I think it's a truly incredible score. It really, in moments, has almost like a noir feel, which is a genre of film that I absolutely adore, and it feels like something from a different era, which is something that I can also very much appreciate. And I think the music, even like the incorporation of the band that's in this movie and the messaging in their songs, there's so many great details in this movie, and the music plays such a large part of that. But what I love so much about this movie is, outside of just being a very fun experience with some really kind of over the top dark humor, a lot of like violence, intrigue, mystery, the film is a dissection of so many different ideas that I think work really well. For starters, as I said at the beginning of the video, I think this movie does a phenomenal job at kind of deconstructing misogyny in the Hollywood machine. There's one scene in this movie that I think is just a perfect representation of the issues that women have in Hollywood as a whole, where our lead character is just literally walking on the streets of LA, and there's all of these women that are dressed kind of similarly going to a casting call for a movie, and we see where they show up, and it's literally in some like kind of overweight slob's garage, and they're going in to like try out for whatever this movie might be. And I thought that that was just a really brilliant representation of a lot of the hurdles that women have to overcome to get jobs in Hollywood, and like the obviously being being very on the nose at the type of like men that are in that industry. And that's just one small example. There's like the whole thing with the sex workers in the movie that are like actresses that also have to do sex work because they can't make enough money in the industry to survive. They're doing a lot of small indie films. I thought that was a really unique commentary on the industry. I think throughout the movie, the way that the female body is showcased, there's like a very intentional male gaze from the lead character because of his like overt misogyny. He seems to be a very incredibly overtly sexual person, and I think that's just adding on to the sexualization of women in Hollywood and kind of picking apart how women are viewed in the industry and how so much of like the way women get selected for roles and things of that nature, especially in a very specific time period, was due to the way that they looked or how they would appeal to a producer or someone working on a film. And it's incredibly disgusting that that's how the industry worked. But I think David Robert Mitchell does a really great job kind of putting those themes at the forefront of your mind. And it works really well. And there's so many scenes I could just pick apart and analyze to kind of add to the thoughts that like that's really one of the central thesis of the film. And you can also kind of parallel that into the brokenness of the Hollywood industry, which is like you see these wealthy elites, and when we learn throughout the film what's going on with the wealthy elite in that community and how like little they care about the people around them, and that in their wealth they just kind of indulge in the most ridiculous things possible. And there's another really great element of kind of deconstructing the industry when it comes to this songwriter that's introduced in this really incredible scene of him kind of discussing the creation of popular music and like how this person created these popular songs but is completely and totally detached to the music, and it's essentially just to make money, and how like people perceive the music as something that sort of drives them along, but like to the person creating that, they don't really care. And I think that speaks volumes to a lot of like corporate music and music that is like created where a paycheck is really the only thing that's sought after. And I thought that it was interesting to incorporate specific artists to kind of really hit the nail on the head of like so much of Hollywood is a business. Like that's why when you get really incredible independent directors, creators and filmmakers that can make art that connects with people, it's so important that they get funding and they get the support that they need so that art like that can be created for a person to consume. Whereas like your average kind of cookie cutter, like thrown out there for any individual person, there's not really any thought involved. And it's like, it was sort of like a look at it from the people who don't care about the art as a whole, seeing it more as like a business mechanism than it is for someone to consume and appreciate. And I like that too. I think it's a very complex conversation that sort of adds to the scope of the Hollywood machine, which is something I really like. And I think one of the most fascinating parts about this movie is kind of the look at like conspiracy culture and people that play into conspiracy theories. One of the largest parts of this movie is our lead character reads these like little zines called Under the Silver Lake that have these really crazy sort of fantastical stories. One's about throughout LA. In this movie, there's someone going around killing all of these dogs. And there's like implications. They try to like imply who could be the one that's doing it and sort of making your mind roll around. And then there's this story about this bird woman creature who goes throughout the night and like murders people in their homes. And I just think adding those conspiracies on top of like what's going on in Hollywood just kind of sent my mind reeling about what people will spend their time on. And there's this really great like moment of dialogue with our lead character and one of the many characters that he meets along the way about like, what's worth wasting your time on a mystery that can't be solved. And I think that's really fascinating with conspiracy culture and like the amount of time and effort and energy people will put into trying to figure something out that oftentimes doesn't really exist, or that even if it did, you're never going to be able to figure it out. And the movie like leaves a lot of open-ended moments, and I think there's a lot of intentionality in that. I think there's a reason why not every bit and piece of thing that is uncovered in this film is completely and totally explored. And that's what I like about this. And that's just some of the material on its surface. But the movie, outside of exploring all of those really fascinating ideas, is a really just fun, well shot, entertaining, and engaging experience that, even though this was like my 7th time watching the movie, I still was equally gripped to the screen as I was the first few times that I watched the movie. And I think that's a testament to an incredible filmmaker. And I really feel bad for David Robert Mitchell that this movie didn't get the treatment that it deserves. And I hope that it has a resurgence. I have noticed throughout the years, people that have watched this on streaming have developed more of an appreciation for it than there was when it was initially released. But it does very much remind me of a lot of the things that I love about David Lynch. It explores a lot of really interesting subject matter in a way that makes you think. It doesn't necessarily explain everything for you, but I think the ending is very satisfying. I really appreciate it every time I watch it. And I think if you've never seen this movie before, it's one of the best in A24's catalog, in my personal opinion. Have you seen Under the Silver Lake? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was incredible. I love it, and it is one of my favorite movies of all time. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.